Hey readers, welcome back to the Book Nook, the cozy corner for readers who love to dive deep into all things books. Whether you're all about annotating your paperbacks, obsessed with audiobooks, or can't stop scrolling through Book Talk, we're here to chat about everything bookish. I'm Desiree.
And I'm Cameron.
And together we're on the community and editorial teams at Fable, the free app for finding, reading, tracking, and chatting about books.
Today's episode is super special because we are talking to none other than the V.E. Schwab.
I know, I honestly still can't believe it. I just, a couple months ago, Cameron posted something on our socials, we saw that she followed us back, and we took this opportunity with both hands and did not let go, and we managed to snatch an interview.
So, without further ado, let's get into the interview.
All right. Well, first off, thank you so much for joining us. I feel like the entire Fable team absolutely lost their marbles when we saw that V. Schwab followed you. And to get to interview you is a huge thing for the team and for Cameron and I as well as bookish creators. So thank you so much for being here.
It was my pleasure.
And to get us started, we have kind of a unique question, which is, what's one question that you're tired of being asked and one that you wish that people would ask you instead?
Oh my goodness. I mean, I'm trying to think if there's a question that I get asked enough that it tires me. I mean, I love questions is the problem. I love talking about everything from craft to story elements to I think the question I wish people would stop asking is, will there be an Addie LaRue sequel? Yeah, that's definitely one where I think the books like Addie and Bones, they're set in the same world, which is kind of my low fantasy scape. And I think I'm interested in standalones that graze each other, but I don't see myself ever writing direct sequels. So that's a question that I wish people would stop asking. And a question I wish I got asked more, you guys, I've been asked everything at this point. Probably why Scotland? It's probably about me and not about my books, which is probably a narcissistic thing to say.
Not at all. Well, tell us about why Scotland.
I have tattoos behind both ankles for wings for wanderlust, and I didn't go to Scotland for the first time until my mid-20s, early to mid-20s, and it was the first place in my entire life where I got off the train there and it felt like all of the silt in me just settled to the bottom of the pool, right? I just felt home. And I had gone, and then I was like, oh, it must be rose-colored glasses. And so I went back again and again and again over the years, and every single time I felt deeper and deeper rooted to the spot there. And so, yeah, it's now where I live when I'm not on tour, and it's where I do 95% of my writing. It just feels like the frequency there is compatible with the frequency inside me. It feels like
that's beautiful.
I just don't feel like I'm in sync. And there I feel like I'm just deeply in sync.
Oh, I love that. I've never been to Scotland. My mom has when I was younger, and she just sent me so many pictures. And she went with both of my siblings and not me, and because I was still in school. So that was a big bummer. But it is definitely on my top 5 places to go.
I recommend it to everyone. My family's from there. My mom's English, but my grandmother was Glaswegian, was from Scotland. My dad's American. But yeah, I feel like I've been there in a past life. It just feels very familiar to me. My bones are happy there.
I love that. Awesome.
Yes. I'm so sorry. Let me just, of course, everyone is...
You're just too popular.
I know.
I was going to say maybe Malfoy was giving you a hard time, but...
Oh my god. Okay.
Is Malfoy a dog or a cat?
Oh, Malfoy's my dog, yeah.
Oh my god.
And actually, I wanted to say I love Scotland too, and that's where I wanted to move. I live in Italy now, and I wanted to live in Edinburgh so badly, but then I couldn't get a visa there, so
so I went to graduate school in Edinburgh because I thought that was the only way I could live there, and it was a hellish year because I had 3 books due, and I was in graduate school. And graduate degrees in Europe are single years. They're extremely intensive. And it wasn't until after I graduated that I was like, now how am I going to stay? And an immigration lawyer was like, well, you have multiple generations of English parentage. You could just just apply for citizenship. And I was like, nobody thought to tell me that before I paid out of pocket for a graduate degree that I do not need. So yeah, I'm grateful for it. But in the end, it did cost me quite a lot because I paid for that degree.
Yeah, that's why I'm in Italy, because my whole family is Italian. So I got the citizenship. Yeah. I'm not complaining. It's great.
Where are you, Desiree?
I'm in Canada, so
Okay,
I'm
so we're
in.
all winning.
Yeah, yeah. I'm in New Brunswick in a super small town that's like it's a very Hallmark-esque town. I moved here for university as well, and like the entire campus, actually the entire town feels like Boston in
Uh-huh.
like in the fall, but it's very nice.
Is New
People
Brunswick
are
on
super nice.
the east side or the west side?
I suck in geography, so
Okay.
we're in the Maritimes.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Closer
Yeah.
to Toronto, not Vancouver. There we go. East side. East side. I'm always it's so bad. I'm such an American. I'm always like, which part are you over? It's like, are you over Michigan? Are you over Minnesota? Are you over Washington? Because I'm still learning.
Yeah, I'm pretty close to like I'm a 6-hour drive from Maine, so
Oh,
I'm
okay.
like
Okay.
not too far away.
You're on east
Oh,
side.
Yeah.
wow.
Great.
Yeah.
I didn't even know that.
Awesome. Yeah, also didn't know until recently we were planning like a trip for the fall and we saw like, oh, Maine is close. We should go there.
Well, I mean,
Well,
well, I just want
okay.
to go to Canada.
We'd also love to know about some of the books that you've read this year, if you've
Sure.
had any time. Did you find a new favorite by chance that you'd like to tell us about?
I'm always finding new favorites. So here's a secret about me. I am an extreme reader, and what I mean by that is I consider it a huge part of my job. I'm a little bit militant about it. When authors tell me that they don't have time to read, I counter that they probably shouldn't be writing then. Like I'm the kind of author that believes if you have time to do one thing, write or read, it should be read. Because I think so often authors start to deprioritize reading, and that is where like creative cross-pollination comes from. Not just reading, but reading outside of the genre that you write is so deeply important. So I aim to read about 125 a year, and I think I'm on track for 150 this year, which I'm excited about. But I've definitely read some really great ones. I finally read Broken Country, which everyone was talking about last year, and it was good. I let's see, I read really weird stuff. I just finished We Love You Bunny, which is the sequel to Bunny by
Oh,
Mona
yeah.
Lisa.
Hmm.
It's really great because I love Mona's particular brand of weird is my brand of weird. Like, I think I've entered a phase. I'm like a haggard crone on the inside now at this point, and I think I've entered a phase where I just like want everyone to swing for the fences on whatever they do. Like, so I want to read the weirdest stuff that I can. I read The Lamb, obviously, by Lucy
Mhm.
Rose. I read Confessions by Kane Minato. I I read a book that's coming out next year that I really loved called Yesteryear by Carol Claire Burke, who's a huge TikToker who became really well known for like exploring trad wife communities on TikTok and doing a deep dive into like Ballerina Farm. And
Oh,
her
yeah.
debut novel is essentially about a trad wife influencer who wakes up in the 1800s. And it's about like the performative behavior versus like actuality. And like it's really, really good. It comes out next year. It's called Yesteryear.
That's
Um,
incredible.
so
Yeah.
that's a really fun one. And I read a debut novel that I was really, really impressed by that I haven't seen anywhere right now that's called A Thousand Natural Shocks by Omar Hussein. And it's just a really, really wonderful, like, introspective thriller.
I'm just typing as we go, adding all of these to my TBR on Fable.
I am,
These all
I've
sound so
like,
good.
yeah, I'm at like 70 something so far. I read Hot Wax, the new ML Rio, which is great. I
Mm.
am also just like the most ornery reader in terms of like I will have a stack of arcs and I'll choose to read something that was published 10 years ago because
Yeah.
that's what I'm
Yep.
in the mood for. Like I'm really really bad. I'm close to blurbs anyway, but like I'm really really bad at reading advanced copies for blurbs because I have to be a mood reader. Like I'm going to read what I want to read and if it lines up with something that's in the arc stack, that's wonderful, and if it doesn't, I'm like too bad. I want to read something else.
No, I relate to that.
100%. We were
Yep.
just talking about that. Yeah.
Hmm.
What's the
Um,
best thing that you two have read this year?
Oh, good question. I think I've read so many good books this year, but I feel like the most recent one that I read was Aftertaste
Oh yeah,
by
did
Daria
you
Lavelle. Oh my gosh, that was so good. I'm like a huge fan of anything that has to do with food, and
yeah.
especially with like ghosts and like just when food and ghosts come together, I feel like that aligns perfectly with like the perfect book in my head. And
I'm
it
bumping that
just
up the
like
stack then because I have it on my shelf at home.
oh my God, it's so good. And it starts off with one thing and then it escalates into a whole other thing. It was amazing and like so different than what I'd read so far this year.
Yeah.
So I recommend it to
Okay,
anyone
great.
who's like down into, the
Yeah,
weirder stuff.
yeah.
So
What about you, Cameron?
I read Drinker of Ink by Shannon and Castleton,
Oh, I haven't heard of
and
this one.
it was beautifully written, and
Add it.
it's about someone told me that it was going to be a romance between like really shy student
Uh-huh.
and her TA,
Okay.
and I went into like thinking it was just going to be like another romance, but the writing about grief and like motherhood
Yeah.
was unexpected and it made me sob. So
Oh, interesting. And it came out last year.
yeah,
Okay, it's on my list now.
and also, I went to my fantasy phase with
Uh-huh.
Glow of the Everflame or like Spark of the Everflame.
Oh,
Um,
was it good?
so good. Yeah, so fun, so fast paced. And then also, like, unfortunately, my best read so far this year has been a reread of Call Me by Your Name. Like, that's
Oh,
just my favorite book of all time.
unsurprising.
Yeah.
Unsurprising. Can't go
hmm
wrong.
It's just so beautiful. But yeah,
Really is.
Amazing.
yeah.
Awesome. All right. Well, we'll get into like the more interviewee questions. Cameron, if you want to start us off.
Of course. So you've mentioned that this novel was a love letter to Anne Rice and a reckoning with writing queer villains. How do
Yeah.
you balance homage with forging your own path in the vampire genre?
Ooh, that's such a good question. I mean, I think everything that we write as novelists is in conversation with previous works, right? Not only with like things that we've loved, but also things that we haven't, ways we haven't felt seen, or things that we want to change. I mean, um, it's it's not to say that there's no original fiction. It's just to say that like it would be inaccurate to say that a work exists that's not in conversation. So it's really just a degree to which it's in conversation. When I say this was a love letter to Anne Rice, it was specifically a love letter to her style of world building in terms of like, okay, so we have a few elements I specifically wanted to play with. Vampires of the Gothic Romanticist era, meaning not sanitized, not straight, not sparkly, right? Like a very specific, the vampires that exist at the intersection of love and horror. There's a reason that I say Bury Our Bones is very much of horror as a genre as much as it is of romance as a genre. It's like horror, romance, literary, and genre, right? And I think that the kind of like flowery prose, but it feeling almost like velvet, a texture. There was an atmosphere I wanted to capture. I also just really love the way in which she essentially took urban fantasy monsters and the magic system set in our world, but effectively did it in a really lyrical, prose heavy way, which is something that I wanted to play with because I really wanted to write urban fantasy, but with a literary affect. Um, and then I really, really love something very specific that she does, which is to play with perspectival reality, meaning you read Interview with the Vampire, you get Louis' version of the story, and then you read The Vampire Lestat, and you get somebody else's version of the story. And you
hmm
realize that whether you're writing in first person or third person, if you're writing fiction, you are not writing objectively. You're writing subjective truths as they belong to the characters. And what you start to realize is like everyone is an unreliable narrator if you think about it. So I wanted to play with the reliability or unreliability of narration and the sense of like reality is only as it exists for the character. So especially with my characters, because they shed humanity over time, and sometimes it's a way in which they're self-aware, and sometimes it's a way in which they're not, they become increasingly unreliable narrators of their own story. So I wanted to play with those elements as well. And then, of course, anytime I'm playing in a genre with its own tropes, I'm looking for my points of departure. So I look at the things which I love about vampire literature and I look at them and I test them against world building. And I say, does this make logistical sense, right? Does it make logistical sense that you can't enter a place without being invited? Yes. Does it make logistical sense that you immolate the moment you step into daylight? Seems a bit much, right? Does it make sense that you can't wear silver? Like, I don't care. It seems arbitrary, but does it make sense that like places full of death call you down to them? Yeah. Does it make sense that the heart is the seat of weakness? Absolutely. right? So I start to try and pick it apart. Okay, well, if the heart is the seat of literal weakness and literal mortality, can it also be the seat of existential weakness? Can it be the seat of humanity as well? Well, what does that look like for me? What does that look like for my monsters? And then I start looking at even the language of it. The word vampire is used one time in the book because it's not a thing they call themselves. And this is a book about them. And so that's where the poem comes in the sense of the language of the motif of a garden, because I wanted to accentuate that they were of the natural world. They saw themselves as not other, not unnatural, but as the literal apex predator, as the thing, the hardiest bloom in the garden, right? And so a lot of it is in conversation with a lot of elements. It's also in conversation with what we don't see. Traditionally, women in vampire narratives are cast to the edges, or they are damsels, or they are meals, right? And so on the rare occasion we have them at the center of a story like Carmilla, that's a crumb that we treat like a meal. Carmilla is a beautiful story. It is not the sum total of lesbian experience, right? And so I wanted to really explore what happens when queer women, specifically when lesbian women, are allowed to be as flawed and as nuanced and as complicated as the straight counterparts that are often given the center of the story.
Wow.
So
I love
good.
that.
I have chills. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so interesting to hear like authors talk about their process
And it's so specific, right? Like I run a podcast called No Right Way that's literally about the fact that no two authors work in the exact same way. Like I build my stories in such an analytical fashion. So by the time I actually sit down to write a book like Bury Our Bones, I know the entire story. I know every single scene for every single character, and I build the narrative order, the order in which the reader experiences it, and then I parse it out into the chronological order, the order in which the characters experience it, and then I write each narrative for each perspective in its chronological order. So from the moment we meet Sabine to the moment we leave her, and then the moment we meet Charlotte to the moment we leave her, and then the moment we meet Alice to the moment we leave her, in chronological order, and then I structure it back into the narrative order.
wow. Well,
So that the voices
one of
stay
our other
distinct.
questions. Yeah.
But I have friends who literally just vibe.
Yeah. That's me. Yeah.
I love that. And so we like briefly covered this at the beginning regarding Addie and this little cameo that we have in
Yes.
Bury Our Bones that feels like a shared world garden is the term that Cameron and I kind of agreed on. How do you see those two books communicating with each other?
Well, they exist in the same space, meaning our space, right? So the way this is essentially my low fantasy scape, wherein, now we understand there are old gods in this garden. There's Luke, right? There are young vampires in this garden. There's everyone we've met in this. But hypothetically, anyone from one of those books could intersect anyone from the other books because they're coexisting. So if their space and their time aligned, technically, Luke could walk into Ezra's coffee shop, right? Like anything could happen. And so I love playing with this idea of like the ships in the night effect, right? Like, because it's really just about, again, perspective. Whose story am I telling? And then it's the idea that everyone else is kind of the chorus. Everyone else is the background. And all it takes is shifting a lens. A character who was on page for maybe a scene or a few pages in Bones could be the main character of their own book, right? And it's not about, oops, sorry, it's summer here, there's flies. It's not about never giving them that story, it's just that this isn't the place to give them that story, right? So that's why I say, like, I want to keep playing with a story, but each story will have to stand on its own. But maybe the roots begin to intertwine a little bit more. Between Addie and Bones, there's just this tiny little cameo. There's like a whisper that's like, it's a leaf petal just grazing your arm in the garden. But hypothetically, you start to wonder, like the note that I wrote to myself after I finished Bury Our Bones was like, what else grows in the garden? Like, what is an old god afraid of? What is the equivalent of a toxic vine? What does an invasive species look like to this garden? Like, what nourishes the soil and what destroys?
I just love your thought process so much.
It's
This
a
is so
mess.
interesting.
It's a mess. I'm coming off of more than a month of tour, and I feel like my brain doesn't work anymore.
Not
No,
at all.
you like think lyrically and you sort of think how you write, which is very
I
interesting.
came from
And
poetry, and I think it's just this way that my brain works that like Bones is both the most I've ever indulged in language in a book, and also, unfortunately, like the least affected I've ever been because it's just the way that my brain works, and usually I have to tamp it down. And I
Mhm.
guess with Bury Our Bones, I just was like, we're just gonna do it. Just write the way that you think.
Hmm. Amazing.
Okay, so Fable, as you know, is built, or maybe don't know, I don't know, is built around book clubs of many, many of which are reading all of your books. So let's say you're secretly lurking in a Fable club that's reading one of your books. What do you
Okay.
hope that they're arguing about?
Oh, who's a hero and who's a villain? I think I want them to always be arguing about who we're supposed to be rooting for.
Mm.
I
Because
love
like that's definitely a through line in all of my books is like it's not black and white, and I don't want you to be able to cleanly say, like without spoiling, I do not think you should be able to declare at the end of Bury Our Bones who was a hero.
that. Mm,
Because you're someone who is definitely set up as a protagonist, but I think if you get to the last page and you still think they were a protagonist and that this is not a villain's origin story, like I want to be a fly on the wall of that conversation.
Hmm.
yeah.
I
And
love
most of
that.
my books are kind of in my own way about where is the end and where's the beginning. Like in a lot of ways, Bury Our Bones ends where a lot of people expect that book to start. And yeah, it's not about that one character's future. It's about the origin story of them becoming new themselves, right?
Hmm.
And so I really like it when people argue about who's good and who's not. I have a character, for
Um,
instance, I won't say who it is, but of the three women, I have a character where I think is by far the absolute worst. And so it's really funny to me when people are like huge defenders of her.
oh, interesting. Oh,
I
I
can
want
see
to
that
know.
being a really interesting debate on Fable. I would want to be part of that and just try to like see. I
I
love
think,
hearing
yeah, I
other
feel like
people's opinions
now
on it.
we
I
have
mean,
to
this happens
pose
with
that
all my
question.
books. This happens with all my books. It goes back to Vicious, wherein it's like Victor versus Eli, and even in like Shades of Magic and Holland, and then in The Invisible Life of Annie LaRue, like you're meant to fall for Luke. You're just also not meant to romanticize it as a healthy, normal relationship, but
Hmm.
you're supposed to lust for it. Of course you are. My issue is that I grew up at a time when a lot of YA novels were like seem to be romanticizing extremely toxic situations because
Hmm.
it's one thing when you grow up reading kind of like 80s romance novels that definitely blur the lines of consent, but as an adult reading them you understand that you're role playing. But a lot of 12 and 13-year-olds don't understand like the fantasy context of a role play. So if you present them with a very toxic person, they're going to think that is a romantic ideal. If you do
Right.
not clarify, if that's your love interest, right, in a YA novel, what you're saying to that 12 or 13-year-old is that that's who you're supposed to want in your life as your boyfriend, as your love interest. Instead of as an adult, you can be like, I mean, we know that we don't really want this dude, but in the
Hmm.
context of this novel, I want this dude. So I think a lot of my work is about like, I don't want to romanticize the bad, but I want you to admit that you like the bad.
Yeah.
I love that. That's amazing. I'm gonna put that on a
People are like,
shirt.
people are meant to love Sabine. Like you are
Hmm.
meant to kind of want Sabine to come and say hi to you in the dark sometime. That is a bad person. But she's still hot. She's still hot because of it.
Hmm.
Oh, amazing.
Yeah.
Okay, so I know that we have about 5 minutes left. So we went ahead and asked our community if they had any questions to ask you in this interview. So we have two questions that we love to cover before we wrap
Sure.
up. So one person asked, your stories often explore fractured selves and the cost of power. If you had to create a magical system where power came from a personal sacrifice, what would your own sacrifice be?
Oh, my soul. Because I
Pretty,
think I
yeah.
think it sounds so dark. I think that like I jokingly say to my therapist sometimes that every book I write feels like it takes a little piece of me. Like,
Mm,
and I joke that I think one day I'm going to run out of pieces. Like it's not gonna that I'm gonna run out of story ideas, but that I'm gonna run out of sacrifices that I give
Mm.
to those stories to make them sing. I think they each take a small toll of my spirit, right? My personhood. And so I definitely think that's what I would give, whether I wanted to or not.
So, next, someone asked about your writing process. And as a fellow author, I am so intrigued by different authors' processes because I think mine's like really not professional. So,
Yeah.
they said, I'd love to know where in the writing process she finds the most joy. They're so open about being in a hardcore plotter and also about drafting and sorry, this is very wordy, and how drafting can be anxiety inducing until
Yeah.
the story finds its legs. So I'm curious if there's a part of the process, dreaming, concepting, editing, that just feels like the wind in her sails.
I That's such a good question. I have two, which is essentially the bookends, meaning like I spend anywhere from 6 months to a year brainstorming, meaning like for the 6 months to a year, that's when I'm building the whole skeleton of the book. Remember when I was like, I
Mhm.
know everything before I start drafting? I spend 6 months to a year figuring it all out. And that's literally day after day after day of me opening documents and like essentially having conversations with myself about what should happen in the scene, about what I want to achieve, about just dumping thoughts for the characters and starting to like shape my thoughts into order. And that's the part where everything is potential. And that's the part that excites me the most because it's just like ideating. It's just playing what if games with myself. It doesn't feel rushed. It doesn't feel precious. I don't have to worry about the exact wording. So I do that for about a year and then I execute the draft. And I hate first drafting because it's an exercise in control failure. It's just the idea in your head is perfect by virtue of the fact it doesn't exist. And then writing it down on paper is the act of letting it become imperfect. And I hate imperfection because I'm a perfectionist. And so that's miserable for me. It's a very white knuckling experience. I remember Addie LaRue took 11 months. And when I finally sat down to do that draft, and every single day I had someone in my life who had to remind me not to delete it because I just was miserable, absolutely miserable. So I do not enjoy the drafting process. And then revision is angsty. But there's a point in revision wherein very late in revision where I find myself reading it and I feel disconnected from it. And I feel like I'm a reader instead of the writer. And I start being like, who wrote this? It wasn't me. Now, because I'm me, that's a deeply like stressful experience because I'm like, oh no, I can't do this again. A past version of me did it. But it's also a huge relief because it's a moment when I feel like it might actually be ready for other people.
Yeah.
So I'd say the brainstorming and the final polish, the moment when I start feeling like the reader instead of the writer, and everything in between is just extremely emotionally fraught for me.
Of course.
I
Yeah.
bet. Yeah, it's quite a process writing a book, especially like some of the as detailed as you go into yours. So I can understand that
Well, and
it's
I'm 25 books in now. And like it truly for me does
That
not
blows my
get
mind.
easier. It gets more emotionally complicated.
Yeah. Because it, like, even when you said 11 months, like, it took me 3 years to write, like, one book. So I can't, and didn't plot at all. So
But I
it's
think,
just
but
so,
that's the
yeah.
thing. You pay for it in one form or another. It might have taken you 3 years, but the process from beginning to end for me definitely took that long. It's just that
Hmm.
I spend a year of it not actually putting down book words. Like I spend a year of it memorizing the map,
Hmm.
memorizing the route that we're going to take from the beginning to the end. So then the drafting process becomes brisk. Brisk being a relative. I have friends who draft in like 3 months, and it murders me every time. Like because again, it's so hard to keep your eyes on your own paper and
Hmm.
not look at what everyone else is doing and feel like you're not falling behind. But I also, because I know that my process can be a little fraught, I am like I'm lining up the next thing at all
Yeah.
times. So the only reason I'm so prolific is not because I'm a fast writer, because I'm not. It's because I always have the next thing ready. Because I
Hmm.
don't actually do well when I'm not actively writing. I write most of the year.
Great.
well, to wrap up with our final question, that's kind of like something Cameron and I came up with.
Yeah.
Would you have anything in the works right now that you could tell us about?
I have a lot of things in the works. I don't know that I can tell you about many of them. What I will say is that my next book will be out next fall, and it's the finale of the villain series. So Vicious, Vengeful, and Victorious, and Victorious will be out next fall, and it's the end. It's
Wow.
the end. There's no more after that of that series. So that's like 13 years in the making from beginning to end.
Wow.
So it's a long
So
one.
crazy.
And then I'm working on Threads of Power, which is the second arc of Shades of Magic. I have 2 more books in that set, and then I've got some more things on the horizon that I can't talk about yet.
Oh my
So
gosh.
much.
And then
Wow.
I still fear that I'm going to run out of ideas. Like
Wow.
I live in terror of running out of ideas.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
it's the nightmare of every single creative person, I feel like.
Exactly. I don't know. I have some friends who are like, yeah, I guess the idea will find me when it's time. And I mean, when I'm like hoarding ideas to
Yeah.
me, like
Oh yeah, mine knows that.
simultaneously terrified I'll die without writing them and terrified that I'll write them before I die. So it just shows that there's no winning in the neurotic writer Olympics.
Mm, yeah.
Very true.
Well, we are at time. Thank you so, so much for just chatting with us about all of this. I feel like I've learned so much, and as like a huge fan of yours, I read Addie 2 years ago. I feel like okay. I was talking about this with Cameron earlier. I filmed my reaction towards the end. Obviously, bawled my eyes out, and posted it on my accounts, and it just reached so many people. And I just want to say that like the emotions that you make readers feel through your books is something that like as a reader myself helped me find so many others. So thank you for that. Thank you for writing amazing stories. Thank you for continuously just like going into battle to write all of these stories.
Oh,
And thank you for being here again. We really appreciated your time.
thank you for reading them. And like I say, thank you for this was such a delight. So thank you for having me on.
Yeah, it was an absolute honor to get to meet you. Actually, I don't know if you remember, but back in the day, you did like a virtual hangout with
Yeah,
Eamon, and
yeah.
yeah, I was in that. So to be able
Oh,
to now
that
talk to you one, and
was
I was, yeah,
during the pandemic, and I was
hmm
so just aware of how much you had all done to like, and it felt like, I will tell you, that was my first, I cried that whole time. And I'm not an emotional person, but it was like the first time I had gotten to have face-to-face time with readers since Addie LaRue hit shelves more than like a year before.
hmm
And it was so emotional for me because normally, I would have gone on tour and I would have met readers, and it had just been so solitary that I had like not actually seen any readers face to face. I hadn't gotten to hear from anyone personally. Like I'd seen online stuff, but it was just so special for me to get to have that time with you guys and like to get to like share space and talk about this story that had taken a decade of my life. So thank you for
yeah,
being part of it.
of course. And I was too nervous to ask a question back then, so now to be able to ask you all these
Yeah.
questions, so fun. This is great.
Oh, I
Oh,
love that.
thank you both so, so much.
Thank you so much, B. Schwab. To our listeners, if you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and follow us on at Get Fable on TikTok or at Fable on Instagram for more bookish content.
Thank you for tuning in, and we'll catch you next time on the Book Nook.